Ever since he was a child, Elian had never felt wanted. Not in his house, not in the town, and definitely not in the eyes of his own father. His name meant light, but the boy was born into darkness, poverty, loss, and whispers behind closed doors. People said he brought bad luck, that wherever he went, strange things followed. Chickens died. Rain would fall on his roof alone. One time, a neighbor claimed they saw Elian sleepwalking under the moon, whispering a language no one could understand. He had no memory of it. But after that, the stares got colder. Even his own mother grew distant. He grew up thin, quiet, and sharp-eyed. He was always listening, especially to things no one else heard. Doors creaking at midnight. A baby crying in the forest. A woman humming behind the old well that no one dared go near. The old folk would cross themselves when he passed. His classmates avoided him like he was carrying a curse. But there was one soul who stayed by his side, no matter what. Turo, his childhood friend. Turo was loud, funny, and brave. If Elian was shadow, Turo was fire. Together, they balanced each other out. Every afternoon after school, they'd meet under the mango tree near the chapel ruins. It was their quiet place. They'd talk about stupid things, dreams, crushes, monsters, and sometimes even death. Turo didn't believe in ghosts. Elian never admitted he did. But deep inside, Elian knew something was wrong with him. He could sense things that weren't there. He could feel the cold spots in a room, even when the windows were closed. He once touched a rusty doorknob and saw flashes, like a memory that wasn't his. A woman screaming, blood on wood, a shadow that smiled. It vanished in seconds, but it left him shivering. He never told anyone, not even Turo. One night, as the air grew heavy with the scent of burning leaves, Elian heard soft knocking on his window. He looked outside. No one. Only the old acacia tree swaying gently in the wind. He was about to return to bed when he saw something strange. The glass had frost on it, like someone had breathed cold air from the other side. He touched the window. It was freezing. The next morning, their teacher announced that an old man from the village outskirts had died in his sleep. Heart attack, they said, but the neighbors swore they heard screams, not from the man, but from inside the walls of his hut. Scratches, too. Deep ones. Turo joked about it over lunch. Maybe it's your fault, bro. You're the walking bad omen, remember? He laughed. Elian forced a smile, but inside he was scared. He hadn't told Turo that he dreamed of the old man the night before. Dreamed of him being dragged across the floor by long, unseen arms. Dreamed of something whispering in Elian's own ear soon. As the days passed, Elian began to feel a presence. It followed him. When he walked to school, he could feel something behind his shoulder. When he bathed in the river, he swore the water pulled at his feet just a little longer than it should have. Sometimes, in the reflection of the water, he saw faces, not his own, not human. But despite all of it, he still found laughter with Turo. They still watched fireflies at dusk, still talked about silly things, like what they'd buy if they had money, or what city life would be like. Those small moments felt like warmth in a world that was slowly turning cold around Elian, and he clung to them, until one day, he found something strange near the chapel ruins. A small stone, wrapped in dry banana leaf, tied with red thread, lying right at the base of the altar. He picked it up without thinking. The moment his fingers touched it, he felt a jolt, not painful, but powerful, like something inside him was suddenly unlocked. He heard a faint ringing in his ears, and then silence. Heavy, unnatural silence. Turo called out to him, asking what he was holding, but Elian couldn't answer. His eyes were locked on the stone. It pulsed, just once, then stopped. That night, he placed it under his pillow and dreamed again. He saw himself standing in a field of bones. The sky was black, the moon red. Around him were shadowy figures, whispering. Some had no faces. One reached out and said, "Blood remembers." He woke up gasping for air. His pillow was damp with sweat. The stone was warm. The days that followed blurred. More dreams. More strange signs. His senses grew sharper. He could now hear conversations from the other side of the classroom. He could feel emotions, anger, fear, sadness, just by touching someone. He accidentally brushed against their neighbor's child and saw the image of a mirror cracking and hands bleeding. He began to pull away. Even from Turo, the boy noticed, of course, and confronted him. "What's happening to you, bro? You're not the same." But Elian couldn't explain. How do you tell your best friend you feel like your soul is being watched? Then came the whisper again. This time, not in a dream. While walking home alone after sunset, a cold wind blew past him, and with it came a voice, low, ancient, and angry. "The seal is broken. He will come for you." Elian froze. He looked around. Nothing. Just rustling trees and the soft buzz of crickets. He ran home. When he got there, he saw his mother standing by the window. She turned to him slowly. Her eyes were distant, as if she wasn't truly there. Then she whispered, "Don't go near the well." Elian hadn't mentioned the well. Not once. Not to anyone. That night, sleep escaped him. He stared at the ceiling, the stone clutched in his hand. Every creak of the floorboard, every gust of wind made his heart race. And then, just past midnight, he heard something move outside his room. He got up, opened the door, and stepped into the hallway. Footprints, wet ones, leading down the stairs, out the back door, toward the well. His hands trembled as he followed. At the edge of the yard, the well stood like a silent mouth in the earth, and hanging above it was a red cloth, familiar, torn from the shirt he wore yesterday. The stone in his hand pulsed again. And then, a voice. Not a whisper this time. Not a dream. "Elian, come closer." Elian stood frozen before the well, the red cloth swaying gently with the breeze. The moonlight caught the corners of his eyes, revealing silent tears that he didn't even realize were falling. He didn't know why, but he felt like something had been waiting for him there, watching, listening, and now, finally calling. But he couldn't move closer. His feet were stuck to the earth like roots, and his heart pounded like a drum inside his chest. His hand clenched tighter around the small stone, the mutia. It pulsed again, not just warm now. It was hot, like it wanted to protect him or warn him. Then, just before he could take a step forward, a hand gripped his shoulder from behind. "Elian," a hoarse voice said, almost in a whisper, "You're not supposed to be here." He spun around, gasping. It was an old man, thin, bent, and covered in layers of worn cloth and beads. His eyes, though, were sharp, too sharp for someone that age. Like they'd seen too much. He smelled of herbs and smoke, and his fingers had black ink markings that spiraled down to his knuckles. "I'm Manghalario," the man said. "I used to heal this town before they started calling me crazy." Elian stepped back. "How do you know my name?" Manghalario didn't answer directly. He looked past the boy and toward the well. "Because I knew your Lola, and I know what's buried down there." Elian's mind spun. He barely knew anything about his grandmother. She died when he was a baby. His mother never talked about her. Manghalario motioned for him to follow. "There are things you need to know." Now, still shaking, Elian obeyed. They walked in silence to the old man's kubo, hidden deep near the edge of the mangroves. Inside, the place was filled with strange objects, bottles filled with oils, dried herbs hanging from the ceiling, bones tied with red string, old books with pages made of something that didn't quite look like paper. "You think you're cursed," Manghalario began, lighting a small clay bowl with burning leaves. "But you're not." Elian sat across from him, still gripping the mutia. "Then what am I?" The old man looked at him for a long time. "You are marked. Your bloodline has power. Old power. Your Lola came from a line of Tagapangalaga, keepers of balance between this world and the unseen. Elian couldn't believe what he was hearing. But why does everyone hate me? Because your mother turned her back on the path, Hilario said grimly. She made a choice, and when she did, she drew something back into this town. Something dark. A cold chill ran down Elian's spine. The voice in the well, what is it? The old man stood and took down a wrapped cloth from a shelf. A being that has been trapped for years. A dilemma. A creature born from cursed magic and hatred. It feeds on grief. It whispers, twists, corrupts. And someone in your family let it in. Elian remembered the faraway look in his mother's eyes. Her sudden silence. Her warning. Don't go near the well. He looked at the mutia in his hand. Why does this react when I'm near it? That, Mang Hilario said, unwrapping the cloth to reveal an ancient pendant, is because the mutia is alive. It chooses a bearer. It chose you. That means the balance still has hope. Elian felt like his whole body was burning with questions. What does it want me to do? Not what it wants, the old man said, but what you must decide. That mutia will protect you from the shadow's influence, but it will also awaken what sleeps in your blood. And if you're not ready, it could destroy you. He showed Elian the pendant, shaped like a small shell, carved with old symbols. This was your Lola's. She used it to trap the dilemma once. But the seal is weakening. The curse is breaking. It's only a matter of time before the creature walks again. And this time, it won't just whisper. Elian's hands trembled as he reached for the pendant. The moment he touched it, images flashed in his mind. His mother, crying in the rain, kneeling before the well, holding something bloody. His father, leaving in anger. And a creature, with no face, crawling from the earth, covered in red smoke. He gasped and dropped the pendant. What was that? Memories, the old man said quietly. Locked in the blood. You're starting to awaken. Elian couldn't breathe properly. I didn't ask for this. I don't want this. I know, Mang Hilario said. Destiny rarely asks for permission. For the next few days, Elian returned to the Kubo after school. Mang Hilario began teaching him how to resist the whispers, how to channel the mutia's protection and sense the flow of dark energies. They practiced rituals of protection using salt, old prayers, and incense. Elian learned to light candles without matches, to feel when spirits were near, and even how to draw wards that glowed faintly when danger was close. But the more he trained, the more distant he became from his classmates, from Turo, and from his own mother. He tried to ask her about their family, about Lola, but she always changed the subject. Her eyes were hollow now. She barely ate, and sometimes, late at night, he would hear her talking to someone, even when no one else was home. One night, he saw her standing at the back window, whispering. Her voice sounded wrong. Not her usual soft tone, but something raspy and low, like someone was speaking through her. Elian, Anik, she said suddenly, turning around, eyes wide. Don't ever go near the healer again. He froze. Why? But she said nothing more. Later that night, the mutia began to glow in his pocket. Faint, but steady. Elian took it out, staring at it under the moonlight. Then a sudden pain shot through his head, sharp and splitting, like something trying to claw into his thoughts. And for a moment, he heard the voice again. She is not your mother anymore. He dropped the mutia, gasping for breath. He looked at the photo of his family on the wall. His mother smiled there, young and full of warmth. But the woman in the other room now didn't feel the same. And suddenly, Elian wasn't sure who he could trust anymore. Elian sat on the edge of his bed, the mutia clutched tightly in his fist. The red glow had dulled to a faint pulse, like a heartbeat in his palm. Outside, the wind howled against the windows, and the rustling of trees echoed through the thin walls of their house. He hadn't spoken to his mother all day. After the night, he heard her voice change. After that whisper said, "She is not your mother anymore." something inside him broke. He wanted to deny it, pretend it was just the Mutia playing tricks on his mind. But deep down, he knew something was wrong. Off, twisted. Memories flooded him. Her soft lullabies when he had fevers. Her warm embrace after long days at school. The quiet nights they spent watching rain fall together. Was it all real? Or had it all been a mask? The betrayal stung, even if he didn't have all the answers yet. And that pain made his chest feel heavy. If your own blood can lie to you, who can you ever trust? Mang Hilario had warned him, the shadow doesn't just corrupt bodies. It poisons memories, emotions, even love. He wanted to scream, but instead, he took a deep breath, wiped his tears, and forced himself to get up. He had training again. That afternoon, in the mangrove shade behind Hilario's kubo, Elian practiced drawing sigils in the dirt. His hands were shaking. The salt lines kept breaking. The smoke wouldn't rise straight from the herbs. The old man noticed. You're distracted. I saw her talking to something, but no one was there. I think she's already been taken. Mang Hulado Vawen. You can't be sure. I felt it, Elian whispered. The Mutia, when she came near, it pulsed like it was warning me. The old man sighed. Then the darkness is closer than I thought. For the next few days, Elian avoided home as much as he could. He stayed longer in the forest, practiced by the riverbank, meditated under the moon. He kept the pendant near him always, feeling its warmth calm the storms in his heart. But the nights started changing. There were sounds, scratching at the windows, soft knocks on the roof. Sometimes he'd catch a glimpse of something just outside the trees. A figure too tall to be human, too thin to be real. And always the same whisper in the wind. You are not enough. He wanted to believe he was just tired, that it was all in his head. But then came the day he walked home from the river and found the neighbor's cat nailed to their front door. His mother didn't even react. She just stared at it, then calmly took it down and burned it in the backyard. No tears, no fear, just silence. Elian locked his door that night. That same evening, Mang Hilario gave him something new. An old dagger carved from black wood with silver etchings. This belonged to your grandfather, he said. He used it when he fought the Iswangs in the valley. It only responds to truth. If your heart is pure, it will glow in battle. But if you hesitate, it will remain dead. Elian held it carefully, the weight unfamiliar in his hands. I don't want to hurt anyone. You will, Hilario said softly. But sometimes hurting is part of saving. Then he handed Elian a piece of cloth, old and worn. Inside was a faded letter. It was written by his father. I had to leave, it read. Not because I didn't love you, but because your mother made a deal I couldn't undo. She wasn't always like this, but she changed, and I was too weak to stop it. Forgive me, Anik. Elian's hands trembled as he read it again and again. His father had known. He'd seen the danger and left him behind anyway. Why didn't he take me? Why didn't he fight for me? That night, Elian didn't sleep. He stared at the dagger, at the Mutia, and thought of all the people in town who had always looked at him with fear or pity. The bullies, the teachers who ignored him. Even Turo had started avoiding him lately, too nervous to speak. They all knew something was wrong. They just never told me. The next morning, as he walked toward the kubo, he noticed something strange. Black feathers scattered on the path. Dozens, maybe hundreds, leading into the forest. He followed them. The trees grew darker the deeper he went. The light dimmed, though it was only early afternoon. The air smelled like rot. And then he saw them. Four men, dressed in torn barong, faces hidden under straw hoods. They stood in a circle around a tree, chanting. At the center, something hung. It was a goat, or what was left of one. Its blood spilled into the soil, soaking in strange markings carved into the earth. When Elian stepped closer, the Mutia in his pocket burned red hot. One of the figures looked up. Elian, The man said, voice deep and raspy. You shouldn't be here. He recognized that voice. It was his teacher from school, Mr. Dela Cruz. You're one of them, Elian said, stepping back. You should join us. Another voice echoed, a woman this time. Your blood already sings the same song. He turned and ran. Branches whipped at his face. The forest seemed to twist around him. He didn't stop until he reached Mang Hilario's kubo, but the old man wasn't there. Instead, a new message had been burned into the wall with charcoal. The ritual begins on the red moon. Elian fell to his knees. The red moon, he had read about it in the old books. A rare lunar eclipse tied to the darkest magic, when his swangs could awaken full power and old curses could be reborn. It was only 3 days away, and now he knew the truth. His mother had made a deal to protect him, but the cost had been her soul. His father had abandoned him to escape the curse. Mang Hilario had trained him, but now he too was missing. He was alone, and yet not completely. Elian looked at the mutia, which now glowed brighter than ever. He could feel something inside it. Hope, maybe, or courage. Whatever it was stronger than fear. He gripped the dagger, and for the first time, its silver lines began to glow. Something was coming, and he would be ready. The days passed quickly, too quickly. Every sunrise felt heavier, as if the light itself was struggling to fight back the darkness creeping into their town. Elian barely slept anymore. Every night, strange dreams pulled him into a world filled with fire, blood, and shadows that whispered his name. He would wake up breathless, the mutia hot against his chest like it was absorbing something terrible. The dagger, once glowing with silver lines, now pulsed with red veins like it was alive. The red moon was only 2 nights away, and the signs were everywhere. Children in the village began falling ill, fevers that never broke, eyes rolled back, murmuring strange words in their sleep. Animals vanished. Chickens, dogs, even goats disappeared without a sound. One morning, a farmer found his carabao standing still in the field, its body whole, but eyes hollow, as if its soul had been drained. The town was breaking. People grew more silent, suspicious. Even during the day, no one looked each other in the eye anymore. Everyone whispered, but no one said the truth out loud. They were afraid, and Elian felt that fear crawling under his skin too. He trained harder now, not because he wanted to, but because he had no choice. Mang Hilario was still missing. Some said he had fled. Others claimed they saw his hut burned down deep in the forest. Elian didn't want to believe either one. But what mattered now was survival. He had one ally left, Turo, his best friend, who had once mocked him for his strange family, now stood beside him, holding a handmade spear carved with protective symbols they copied from Hilario's book. But even Turo wasn't the same. He laughed less, spoke less, and sometimes when Elian looked into his eyes, he saw worry, not just for the town, but for Elian himself. That night, while hiding behind the church ruins where they stored sacred salt, Turo finally asked the question neither of them wanted to say out loud. What if your mom is part of them now? Elian didn't answer right away. He just stared at the moon, still pale but slowly bleeding red at the edges. I don't know if she ever left, he whispered. They both fell silent. The truth was too heavy. The following day, they returned to the hill where Mang Hilario first taught Elian to draw protection sigils. The lines were still there, but now warped, twisted like someone had tried to erase them and replace them with something darker. Theirs smelled like burnt flesh. There, buried under the soil, they found something. A small wooden statue. An old idol with a cracked face and hollow eyes. Wrapped in red thread. The same kind used in curse binding. Elian froze. That's a Tagabulag, Turo muttered, voice trembling. It blinds people's minds, makes them forget or believe lies. He picked it up with a leaf and tossed it into the fire. The flames turned black for a moment before rising back to normal. "They've already started," Elian said. "They're preparing the final rites." Later that night, back in their hideout beneath the chapel, they laid out all the clues they'd gathered: scraps of Hilario's burned notes, strange patterns found on doors around town, and drawings of people they suspected were part of the cult. It was bigger than they thought. Not just a few villagers, but leaders, teachers, storekeepers, even the town priest. And at the center of it all, his mother. Elian stared at her name, written shakily on the paper. Each letter a stab to his heart. He wanted to tear it up, pretend it wasn't true. But too many signs pointed to her being the key. Turo noticed his shaking hand. "You okay?" "No," Elian admitted. "But I have to be." The mutia glowed softly in his palm, as if it was agreeing. They started preparing, carving more sigils into wood, boiling salt water with blessed leaves, sharpening weapons. Every second mattered now, but the darkness didn't wait. That night, the shadows attacked. They came silently. Smoke slithered through the cracks in the chapel walls. The candles flickered and died. The cold rushed in like a scream. Turo grabbed the spear. Elian held the dagger. From the dark mist, a figure stepped out, tall, covered in bones and ash, with eyes like dead stars. It didn't speak. It didn't need to. Its presence screamed in their heads. Elian's legs froze, but the mutia burned in his pocket, snapping him back. He raised the dagger. The creature lunged. They fought. It moved like air, fast, weightless, cruel. But the dagger cut through its shadow. Turo's spear landed a hit, and the creature howled, a sound that wasn't human, like metal grinding through flesh. It vanished into smoke, but it left something behind, a warning carved into the stone floor. The bloodline must Yendi. They were being hunted, not because Elian was just a threat, but because he was the last piece of a prophecy none of them fully understood yet. His blood was a key. He sat alone after Turo fell asleep. The stars above were barely visible now. Clouds gathered thick around the moon, turning it darker by the hour. He thought of his father, of the letter he left behind. I had to leave. Cowardice? Or sacrifice? Now Elian wondered, did his father leave to protect him? Or to protect himself from doing what Elian might soon have to? Kill the one he loved. He didn't know if he could, but time was almost out. The red moon would rise tomorrow night, and whatever was buried beneath their town, whatever was trying to wake, would finally break through. He closed his eyes, gripping the mutia tightly. The warmth of it spread into his arm, into his heart. Not just power, but memory. Love, the real kind. From his childhood, from the part of his mother that might still be there. If there was even a chance to save her, he had to try. But if not, he'd have to make the choice no son should ever make. Elian thought he was ready. He thought the battles he had faced, the shadow creature, the cursed signs, the truth about his mother, were already the worst parts of this journey. But he was wrong. The real storm hadn't begun yet. The next day, the skies didn't turn red like the others warned. Instead, it was silent, calm, the kind of quiet that made you feel like the world was holding its breath. That afternoon, he and Turo followed a trail of black feathers near the old schoolhouse ruins. A trail only seen by someone carrying a mutia. It led them deep underground, into a forgotten tunnel covered with roots and strange carvings. There, hidden in a locked box under the dirt floor, they found a second mutia. But this one was blue, cold, and humming. The moment Elian touched it, a vision flashed in his mind. His mother, younger, kneeling in front of a giant tree carved with ancient sigils, whispering to something buried beneath it. The voice inside that vision was not hers. It was something else, something ancient. He pulled his hand back, gasping. Turo saw his face and panicked. What did you see? Elian shook his head. Not just the Aswangs. There's something deeper, more powerful. They serve it. They didn't know what to do with the second mutia yet, but they kept it, wrapped in cloth, hidden from sight. Turo didn't trust it, and Elian didn't blame him. That night, a soft knock came to the chapel door. Elian raised his dagger. Turo held his breath. The door opened slowly, and there stood Mang Hilario. But something was wrong. He was alive, but barely. His face was pale, sunken. His arm was wrapped in dried herbs, stained with black blood. His eyes no longer fully human. He entered, breathing heavily. "I tried to stop them," he said weakly, "but they found me first." Elian helped him sit. Turo gave him water. Hilario pulled out an old scroll, burned at the edges but mostly intact. "This," he said, "is the truth about your family." Elian froze. The scroll was from long ago. It told of a bloodline cursed, not because they angered spirits, but because one of their ancestors made a pact with something older than death. A creature from beneath the land. Not an Aswang, not a demon. Something deeper. The pact was to protect the village. In exchange, one child from every third generation would be offered in ritual, to bind a creature, to silence it for another 100 years. And now it was Elian's turn. He was never meant to fight it. He was meant to feed it. Elian felt like the air had been ripped out of his lungs. "So that's why she raised me alone. Why she made me stay in the shadows." Hilario nodded. "She tried to run. But the pact, it always finds its way." Turo clenched his fists. "So we're just pawns?" "No," Hilario said. "You are the first one strong enough to break it." He pulled out a final object from his cloak, a stone blade, old and etched with strange glowing words. "This is the key. Only you can wield it, Elian." Elian didn't want to touch it, but his hand moved on its own. The moment his fingers wrapped around the handle, the blade glowed red. Not evil, not holy, something in between, balanced. Turo stared at him like he was seeing him for the first time. "You're really meant for this," he whispered. But Elian didn't feel chosen. He felt cursed. Later that night, they argued. Turo didn't trust Hilario anymore. He was bitten. Look at his veins. Elian defended him. "He saved us. But what if he's leading us to the sacrifice?" Elian couldn't answer that. The doubt was heavy. Osa. Everything felt wrong. The next day, they traveled to the mountain. To the tree Elian saw in his vision. It stood tall, twisted and black, surrounded by bones of animals and people. They set traps, salt circles, daggers carved with runes. Everything they could. The red moon would rise that night. They had hours left. While Turo stood guard, Elian knelt beside the tree, holding both mutias, red in his left hand, blue in his right. They pulsed in rhythm, fire and ice. And then he felt it, something moving beneath. The earth groaned, and from mist a figure stepped forward. It was not his mother. It was his father, still alive, still young, looking exactly as he did in the one photo Elian kept hidden in his pouch. "Elian," he said softly. Turo aimed his spear. He's supposed to be dead. But Elian didn't speak. Couldn't. He stared at the man who had left him. The man whose blood ran through his own. "I never left because I wanted to," the man said. "I was taken." He pulled up his sleeve, revealing a mark burned into his arm. "A seal. They used me to bargain for time. Your mother tried to protect you. She gave me up instead. But the creature wants more." Elian backed away. "Why now?" "Because I escaped, and I came to stop what's coming." But something in his eyes was off. Too calm, too smooth. Elian reached into his cloak. The mutia burned red, and the man's smile cracked. "You're not him," Elian whispered. The figure's face twitched, then melted, revealing something underneath. Not a man. A hollow. A vessel shaped like his father, but filled with something else. It laughed. "You are brave, child, but you are late." The earth behind the tree split. A deep hum echoed out, and from the roots, black smoke poured. Turo pulled Elian back, but Elian stood his ground, gripping the mutia and blade. The false father stepped forward again. "Your blood was never meant to be used as a weapon," it said. "Only as a key." Elian looked at the blade in his hand, then at the sigils glowing around the tree. He finally understood. It wasn't just about surviving. It was about choosing. He could either use the blade to seal the creature again, using his life as the sacrifice, or fight to destroy it completely, risking unleashing it fully if he failed. A terrible choice, and time was running out. Above them, the clouds cracked open. The red moon bled light into the forest. The final hour had begun. Elian turned to Turo. "I need to know, if I fall, will you finish it?" Turo's eyes welled with tears. He nodded. The mutias glowed brighter, and the roots of the tree began to move. Beneath the soil, something massive was waking. The sky above the mountain had turned deep red, like it was bleeding through the clouds. Elian stood frozen before the giant, twisted tree, the glowing red and blue mutias burning in his palms, and the ancient blade humming like it had a heartbeat of its own. Beneath his feet, the ground trembled, slow and steady, like something enormous was pushing to rise from under the soil. The creature was awakening. The false father, now a grotesque, shifting husk of shadows and broken memories, extended long, smoke-like arms toward Elian. "You were never meant to fight," it whispered with 10 voices at once. "You were meant to open the door." Turo screamed from behind as another part of the ground cracked open and dark hands began crawling out. Figures cloaked in the smoke of the past, Aswangs fused with the old magic, snarling with teeth sharpened by curses. Elian closed his eyes. His mother, his father, the cursed pact, all of it had brought him to this point. He had no more time to doubt. The choice had to be made now. With a cry that echoed through the trees, Elian slammed the red and blue mutias together, and the resulting flash of light exploded like thunder, blinding the creatures for a moment and knocking back the false father. The stone blade in his hand turned violet. Neither light nor darkness, but the truth in between. Elian charged forward. His blade met the creature's arm in midair, slicing through the smoke like it was cloth. The creature hissed in pain, twisting, shifting between the form of his father, his mother, even Turo. Try to confuse him, weaken him emotionally. "You don't know who you are without them," it hissed. "I do now," Elian roared. They clashed again. Shadows struck from all sides, but the blade pulsed with light, burning through every curse and illusion. Elian was fast, but he was also fighting from pain. Every blow he gave felt like cutting his own history apart. Every strike against the creature felt like turning against everything he once believed about his family. Still, he kept going. Turo fought beside him, spearing the smaller cursed beings trying to swarm from the earth. Salt bombs exploded around them, burning the dark mist, clearing space for Elian to reach the base of the tree. But then it happened. A single whisper carried through the air. "Elian," he froze. It was her voice, his mother, real or not. He turned his head and saw her, standing behind the tree, in her human form. No claws, no fangs, just eyes full of tears. "I tried to save you," she whispered. The creature laughed, seizing the moment. It wrapped around Elian's torso, throwing him to the ground. "Too weak," it hissed. "Just like them all." Elian gasped, the wind knocked out of him. The blade slid across the grass. Turo ran, but an Aswang pounced on him mid-stride, biting into his shoulder. "No!" Elian cried. Everything slowed, his friend bleeding, the mutia pulsing weakly, his blade just out of reach. The creature looming above, preparing to strike the final blow. But then something ancient moved inside him, a memory not his, a vision of the original pact, the ancestor who made the deal. But in the vision, Elian saw something different. The pact didn't have to continue. It only did because the heirs believed the lie. And he wasn't like them. He was something else. He reached out, not with his hand, but his heart. The Mutias rose from the grass like they were called by will alone. And then the blade returned to his palm. He stood, eyes glowing, not cursed, awakened. The creature shrieked. "No, you are not the key." "You're right," Elian said. "I'm the end." He leapt and slashed through the creature's chest, opening a massive wound of light and shadow that tore the fake flesh apart. The mountain shook violently. The tree split down the middle. Black ichor spilled from its core. The creature screamed in every voice it had stolen, every ancestor it had tricked, and then shattered into a cloud of ash and screams that vanished into the wind. Silence. Then the earth stilled. The tree burned from the inside out, crumbling into ash. The red moon began to fade. The cursed beings turned to smoke, dissolving as if their ties to the creature had been severed. Turo fell to his knees, exhausted but alive. Elian stood in the middle of it all, bloodied, shaking, but no longer carrying the same weight. It was over. The pact was broken. The curse was gone, but not without a price. They buried Mang Hilario the next morning under the very tree that had once held the evil beneath. Turo's wounds were healing, but slowly. The curse had touched him too deeply. Elian kept the blade, now cold and quiet, wrapped in cloth and placed in the chapel, should the evil ever try to return again. But something still bothered him. His mother's voice. Was it real? Was she there? Or was it the creature's final weapon against him? He walked to the edge of the village one morning, holding the blue mutia in his hand. And there, by the river where they once gathered water, stood a woman. White dress, barefoot. Her face was soft, tired, but peaceful. "Nene," Elian whispered. She smiled, eyes wet with tears. "I'm sorry," she said, and then faded into mist. A goodbye, not a trick. A spirit finally freed. Elian closed his eyes, letting the tears fall. He had no family left in blood. But Turo stood beside him, arm in a sling, a half-smile on his face. "You saved us," he said. "No," Elian replied. "We saved each other." The village slowly rebuilt. The whispers of the curse became stories. And Elian finally walked not in shadow, but in light. But in the forest, far beyond the old path, deep in a cave where no one dared go, a tiny crack pulsed with red light. The creature was gone, but the source? Still waiting, watching. After the creature's final scream vanished into the air, the silence felt heavy, like even the trees were holding their breath. Elian stood in the clearing, hands still trembling. The blade he used had stopped glowing. The Mutias were quiet now, resting like they, too, had fought their last battle. All around him, the shadows of the cursed had vanished. Smoke had cleared, but the scar on the land, and in his heart, would never fully fade. He looked over at Turo, sitting against a tree, wincing from his wounds. Blood stained his shoulder, but he gave Elian a tired thumbs up. "You did it," he whispered, half smiling. Elian shook his head. "We did. But it still hurts." And it did. Because no battle like that ends without something being lost. The next day, the village gathered. Word had already spread about the cursed mountain, the creature that had haunted their ancestors, and the boy who faced it. People looked at Elian differently now. Not with pity, but with fear, awe, maybe even guilt. The boy they once ignored was now the reason they were alive. But Elian didn't feel like a hero. He felt hollow. He remembered the face of his mother, smiling one last time by the river before she faded. "Nene, you should have been the one here, not the monster," he whispered to himself while sitting near her unmarked grave under a mango tree. He placed the blue mutia on the ground beside her grave. "This belongs with you." He kept the red one, as a reminder that some power doesn't come from magic, but from pain. from choosing to rise even when your heart wants to sink. The following weeks were quiet. The forest slowly came back to life. The animals returned. The air felt lighter. But for Elian, the silence only made the echoes in his mind louder. Every now and then, he would see flashes, his father's empty stare, the creature's twisted voice, the vision of his ancestors trapped in suffering. He wondered if the curse truly ended or just moved somewhere else, waiting for time to pass. One night, Turo came over with a small wooden box. "I went back to Mang Hilario's hut," he said. "Found this under the floorboards." Inside was a journal. Old, fragile, but filled with notes, drawings, and secrets. It was Hilario's record of the curse, of how it started and how it was supposed to end. They spent hours reading it by candlelight. In one of the final pages, there was a hand-drawn sigil, a symbol Elian had seen in his dreams since childhood. It wasn't a curse. It was a mark, the mark of the breaker, the one destined not to continue the pact, but to destroy it. And it had always been on Elian's back, in the shape of a birthmark. He was never meant to serve the curse. He was born to end it. Tears quietly ran down his cheeks. All that time, he thought he was unwanted. But the truth was he was protected. That's why his real parents kept the truth. Why they hid things. They weren't punishing him. They were preparing him. He closed the journal and placed it beside the blade. "It's over," he whispered. But Turo, looking at the horizon, said, "Not really." Elian followed his gaze. Smoke. Far off in the mountains beyond the next province. "Another one?" Elian asked, heart tightening. "Maybe," Turo said, "or maybe something worse." They didn't speak for a while, and then Elian stood, placing the blade on his back. "If it is, we won't let it grow." "Kasama, emo eko," Turo said firmly. "Always." Before they left the village the next day, Elian went to visit the Albulario's grave. He placed a folded cloth on the stone. Inside was a necklace, an old heirloom with a cracked gem that still shimmered slightly. "Thank you," Elian whispered, "for seeing me when no one else did." As they walked away from the village, down the trail toward the unknown, Elian looked up. The sky was clear. No red moon, no black fog, just stars. And for the first time in his life, he wasn't afraid of what came next. He wasn't a victim anymore. He was a guardian now. Somewhere far behind them, a child would sleep peacefully for the first time. A mother would no longer cry over a sick baby. A family would not disappear under the cover of night. Because someone, two friends, had chosen to fight. And they weren't done yet. They were just getting started. But Elian knew whatever came next, he would face it not for glory, not for revenge, but because deep inside him was something stronger than any curse. Hope, a kind of light that no darkness could fully swallow. A few days later, as they camped near the ruins of an old chapel, Turo turned to Elian. "You think we'll ever be normal?" Elian smiled softly. "Maybe not, but maybe we'll make the world a little more normal for someone else." A breeze rustled through the trees, and for just a moment, they both heard it. A laugh, soft, gentle, familiar, like a mother watching from beyond. They looked at each other. "Did you hear that?" But neither said anything. They just nodded and stared into the fire, because some goodbyes don't need words, and some endings are just beginnings in disguise.